hate the mechanics on this camera. I open up the screen and it doesn't turn on. Most of the time it does, but if I pause for a while, it just shuts down completely, and then I have to wait, and it reboots the whole, it's not slow, but it reboots the operating system, so it takes like a second or two, and it's just so obnoxious. Okay, so we've seen 2 more expansions. Elgin and Joliet expanded. He bought up a basically maximum number of shares. A couple of people who had some extra money kind of didn't really think about them wanting to buy in, but it turns out that they actually had a certificate of it. And then the Providence and Worcester also did an expansion up to 5 share company, and it just sold out. And I'm not sure why, except that it's sitting here with no debt and probably is just going to do just peachy. Might actually just run into nowhere. And now we're getting to the complicated stuff. I think I want to merge the Strasbourg. Yes, that gets my debt limit into an ugly position, but it keeps me from having to buy a train right away with my no money. God, this is hideous. But it also is going to do significant damage to people who are holding the Alton and Southern short stocks, because it's going to run for money without, having to full swallow or anything like that. And it's going to centralize the value at half of 125, which will be at the 60 rate, shooting the stock value back up on those shares. So the way a merger works is a little different. We haven't seen one, so this is going to be a 5-share merger, and they become a 10-share company, and they exchange stock on a 1-for-1 basis. One of the companies survives, the other one goes away. With all those short shares out, I think I'm going to pick the Alton and Southern to survive. Makes it a little easier to convert the shares. So everything the Alton and Southern had, or everything the Strasbourg had, goes into the Alton and Southern. All the loans. It's now a 10-share company, and this guy had a couple of Alton and Southern shorts, but he had a Strasbourg share, so that canceled out one of his shorts, and so we've already started retiring some of the short sales there. And this is done, so I'm going to push it down here so that I can remember it. We'll go to this guy. Okay, I'm converting a mistake which would have been a massive, massive problem, which is he had to do a conversion on the Attica. Much earlier in the turn, he could have done a conversion to 10-share on the Union, but instead he did it to the he was planning on doing it to the Attica. If he did it to the Union would have to buy a train, the Attica would have to buy the train from the Union, all kind of icky stuff there. And I don't know why I didn't choose that, because I had shitloads of money to put into the Union, and it's probably not going to be advancing much. It's got a 3 train now. It can run 50, 60, 11, 17 a share, it looks like, at this point. It would have to pay out full to increase in value, which it'll probably do, but all my cash isn't really helping me. So what I had done wrong was I had gotten to the point where I could not buy an Arcade in Attica without exceeding my share limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I gave back the Providence share, and took the $90 back from that, which the owner of the Providence is a lot happier with this. He didn't really want to be completely sold out. He wants to make some money off of being able to pay out heavily because his stock value is fairly high. And that pushes us to the hardest problem of all, the Susquehanna. Now, this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, he's still got a space on. This is the only guy who was fully booked in his shares. Note that the short sales count as nothing. They're just debt. Let's talk a little about the problem of the Susquehanna. So, obviously it's heavily indebted. It's got some short sales out there. If I float it up to 10 shares, I can buy at most 3 of them, $55 each. That's $165 I'm putting in here. 100 of that bucks goes for the tokens. That leaves me with 65, and that'll help me pay these loans off. But here's the big rub to the whole damn thing. Hey, that'll help me pay off the interest on the loans for one round. But the real problem is I'm running a train that is making $140. My interest is 150 here. It'll be going down a little bit, right? So it'll be 125. But basically a full swallow pays my loan interest, and putting extra money into it isn't going to really help me. So I think it's a lost cause, to tell you the truth, and that's a shame. It's got kind of an interesting position with these two there. The only way that I can make it work is if I can get its stock value up so that I can dump more money into it. Now, of course, I can take out more loans and run for longer and be a constant drain on these people if I'm paying anything out. But I think it's something that I'm willing to let drift towards the acquisitions, which probably means I want to dump in a share when I get a chance. I don't think I can fully save it. Now, once it's in acquisitions, it's kind of like when companies get down in 1830 into the brown zone or whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, well, sure, you can take it. Go ahead. You can have it all at once. Do you really want it? The only reason it's working is because there's lots of shares in the bank pool. But in this, there's no such thing as lots of shares in the bank pool. They have to be in the treasury, which means I have to have the cash for them. Of course, if I put that extra money in at the right time, maybe I can get cash in the bank pool. But I can't, because I've got to go through another operating round. I got to pay off those loans. Maybe I can take out a whole bunch more loans with a 10-share company, because this thing looks like it's on the road to hell, and I don't think there's a way to solve it. Floating it larger, not buying the shares, well, I can't do that without eating up I don't know, without eating up the I'll owe $100, which, that's another loan basically, not just $100, but then the interest on that loan, which I don't have to pay right away. But yeah, $100 would be an extra loan to expand. That extra expansion gets me 4 more loans. Maybe I can buy shares, out of the open market with that shit and try to pay out I mean, it would keep some value. It doesn't have much right now. Let me think. I decided I had to do it. I had to buy all the shares up as well. I'm sort of floating it with my own cash in this sense. And yeah, it's not going to do much good. But here's what it does that helps me out. If I don't keep it alive, I'm responsible for that $500 in loans. The $125 I put into it just now, and it's not going to go below 40 in a sense, right? You know, unless somebody does pick it up, and then they take those loans off my hand. So yeah, I think I can afford to go up to a 10-share company, to take that $15 a share loss on 3 more shares and use the company as best I can. The only thing that can get me in trouble is the loans. So if I can figure out a way by swallowing whatever to start paying down those loans, I'll be in better I'll be in better shape than if I don't. You know, like if I just let it crash as it's going, because it looks like it's a hopeless case otherwise. Again, I don't understand enough about making a private sale, like a friendly sale, for anyone to think about doing it. The Bessemer is sitting on a shitload of cash, but that's the money they're planning on buying their train with. Maybe a train for the Boston Company. Oh God, I don't know. All right, I'm just gonna pass on that. I mean, see, this is the thing, you know. I mean, what am I gonna do? Put the Boston and Albany up for sale? What happens if I sell that? I could get a shitload of money. But yeah, I think I want 2 companies more than I want to incur debt to pay into my pocket, which is essentially what would happen from it. And what if somebody else buys the Boston and Albany? Well, then it's gone, but I mean, it's in their hands instead of mine. And I don't know if that's that terrible, but it's not a completely unhealthy company. I've kind of slowly built it up. Oh, I'm running out of battery. The same way that, you know, the Pittsburgh area is slowly built up. Either way, I'm going to push this to the next operating round. And we've eaten up a lot of time, but I can't tell how much, because this uses a different counting system. It counts down from like 1,000. I've used up over an hour, haven't I? I don't know. But I want to get through the rest of this sequence on a video. You know, it's starting to see what the fallout is from this. Well, not just, we thought we'd see it from just the stock round itself, but because of the delay, which he managed to pull off, and it was to his own advantage in some ways, although I think overall he probably should have forced the trains out and caused more problems. Because, hey, that 3 train was actually useful to the Union, right? And everyone else was really relying on all those deuces to get themselves through a little bit of trouble. But there should still be some fallout in terms of incomes, etc., for some of these companies, to see how they can handle things. Paid out the mail runs, and we go over to the Pittsburgh. Gets 1 run on that 2+ train. You know, half the reason that I turned on the camera the first time was not just to give the summary for myself, and because you've seen what's going on. For me, it's a new day. But also, there was some kind of complaint about this camera. Oh yeah, my battery life is lower on this camera. It seems to eat up battery quicker, and I only have one battery for it. Unlike the other ones where I've been collecting up cameras and may have even bought a spare battery, I have tons of batteries, I have a charger for it and everything. This one I'm pretty much stuck on what I can get off one battery. And the Pittsburgh Company runs for full with its 2+ train, 26 a share, sweet, whatever. And trying to break through to Chicago, but that's not that big a deal quite yet. And takes out a single loan, which I did not account for, in order to buy that 4 train. That's a perfectly viable, sweet setup, to tell you the truth. I'm going to be able to maybe pay out halves and stuff at times to get enough cash, not just to pay off the loan, but to prepare for, a single or maybe 2 permanent trains. I do have 3 shares sitting in there for the next 2 runs, so I probably want to pay out during those, but we're not positive. So that was an easy transition of the sort of, hey, we're doing this the slow and steady way. Of course, the problem is he has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minus 1, 6 shares in his hands, whereas there are people with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 shares in their hand. So that slow, steady route may still not work. One of the things, I know what I wanted to talk about. The fact that I can transfer trains. This was not the case the first time I played it. I played it with the rules wrong there. I missed that one. Means that I can just pay out, get a lot of cash in here, and create a savior company. And there are easy ways to discard savior companies in this game. Where you don't necessarily lose a lot of money. You don't have to go get a permanent train on it necessarily or whatever. The thing you have to do is avoid putting it in debt. Now, of course, you're investing your own money into saving another corporation, which may be which may be similar to taking the hit on, say, the debt load or whatever. But it's not the same. Because everything's running and things are going fine and there's really no problem going on there. You're just infusing cash. So this game actually makes it easier, I think. Not that I've done it. I don't think so. It's hard to tell. But I certainly haven't intentionally just done it on that fashion of, hey, let's start a feeder company to infuse cash into my corporation, and then I kind of don't care what happens to it. In 1830 or something, if you do that, you have to find a landing for that feeder company. If you're holding all the shares to it, that's your investment. You lose that, that's fine, whatever, but it's not just that. You got to find some way to get that thing a permanent train or get it into someone else's hands. Boston and Albany here, trying to increase their stock value. Another run allowed them to do that. At some point, I can float to the 10 shares, buy some more shares if I have enough cash of my own. Right now, I've got kind of a problem because of all of this short shares that I've got. That's loans, essentially. This player may have fucked up completely. But in essence, it may be by not having pushed that trade out. He may be just doomed. Speaking of which, his other company goes, and it does not have any trains on it. And buying that 4 train, fine and dandy. So here's where I say feeders kind of don't matter. Next turn, the Boston and Albany could spend $1, buy the Bessemer and Erie Railroad train, and essentially this corporation could disappear. Granted, it's cost me a few $100. But I've infused a few $100 into one of my corporations at basically no cost to myself beyond, I've been able to transfer it just from my pocket to that corporation, to that corporation, which is something that is not trivial to do in most XX games. So this one now is allowing me the flexibility to build my companies out, with cash out of pocket without much trouble. that's something, again, last time I played, I didn't allow transfer of trains because of not reading the rules correctly. And I think it played a slightly more interesting game because this is just too flexible, too easy to make a corporation work, you know? For the GW here, a couple of issues, or the Grand Trunk question. Iran. So the positioning is like this, and this is something I want to point out, which is kind of interesting about these games where stock market value doesn't necessarily move. And it's important that the track be positioned the way it is and set up the way it is. You know, some people were talking about, hey, just slide them down. They don't have to, you know, that tells you whether it's moved or not. You don't have to flip them. No, that's not sufficient, I don't think. Here, well, maybe it is. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. But the key here, it paid out. It did not move forward, so it stays in place and flips over. Now, if this was down here, not flipped over, it wouldn't go to the bottom. So I couldn't do an inverse or something. I'd have to bump it or something if I did that. But I could just slide it down. So I'm sure I could work out a way to do it. I do use the bottom and top of the chart for sort of a temporary memory thing. So I do have to do the mechanical flipping to maintain that. And I don't want to go into that. That's just, it gives me a couple extra spaces to keep track of things for intermediate states. Now the question is, does the Grand Trunk want a choo-choo? It would take, I think, 5 loans to get one. Each loan at $75. I think I do. Worst case scenario, yeah, I'm taking a lot of loans among a lot of companies, among my 2 companies. But worst case scenario is I can probably get that into a company that will not. So I need to help the Alton and Southern. That's the big problem. And there are people who are short selling the Alton and Southern. So I have a double incentive to do that. And one of the ways I can do that is by getting a big floor train with the Grand Trunk that has the money to do so and move that over to the Alton and Southern. Yes, it leaves the Grand Trunk in a really iffy position, but maybe it can swallow a bit. It's got a high stock value, so it's hard to improve my stock value. And it has not yet done the shift even to 5 shares, so I can put more cash into it. So I want to get that better run there. So I'm going to saddle it up with a bunch of loans for the Alton and Southern. And oh no, I'm not. It's only a 2-share company. It can't do that. Okay, well, I guess it won't take any loans out yet. Okay, and here again, we're getting to tough decisions for players. Over here, Union Railway pays out, moves forward 1. It's given out 170. It's a fair amount of cash. You can see I'm collecting up huge wads of money that I can throw into getting what I can get 3 more shares of Union. That's a fair bundle of cash that I'm going to be able to throw in there. The question is, do I want to saddle the thing with a bunch of loans and buy a 4 train now, or, and it can, or do I want to rely just on buying shares with it, or what is sort of the decision there? There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4 trains left. Okay. One company has a 3 and a 4 train. That's a really good combination, but if everybody goes for it, first of all, it locks you out of the 5 trains, which are the cheapest trains. For the most part, you can buy the first 5 train, I believe. I think we're allowed 3 trains with the 4s. I find this rule book a little hard as a reference. I think more because of its construction. It feels fragile. And of course, it's got this annoying gloss, but companies can own 3 trains. So, yeah. Oh, 2+ trains can't be bought or sold. That's something I got to keep an eye on. Nobody should be buying a 2+ train, and I hope I haven't cheated on that yet. From another company, you can't transfer the money that way with a dying train, which would be an effective thing. If I have the 2 trains, I can make better money. But the more people who do that, the worse a decision it is. And I look around and there's a lot of people who can, and I'm a little torn on it, you know. There's a lot of money to be made by running 2 trains at this point in the game. But if this point in the game doesn't last very long, it's problematic. And with the export in play, it's never going to hit the kind of wall that it sometimes does with the last 4 train in an 1830 game. So that's something to consider. And I don't know. I feel like I should. I'm going to have a single 4 here, basically. So I've got room to shift things around if I want to buy the 5s. I think that's my argument in favor. So we're going to... We're not... Oh, so here's the problem. I can throw a lot of money into this company, but not if I saddle it down with a whole bunch of loans. I'll hold. Oh, let's make it harder. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I got no room to throw a lot of money into this company. I have to make space in my stock portfolio to do that. I'm at certificate limit, which is problematic. So I think I do have to buy it. And then just to show you, yeah, you know, theoretically I have to buy it. But if I grab 4 loans, that's $400. That gets me enough cash to buy this. Well, then I need another loan to be able to pay off all my interest, because interest is $25 each, so I owe $125. So I'd need a 5th loan. Well, I can't do that until I expand, so I have to hold. It's just like ping pong in my mind. Normally I report these things all at once at the end of a single corporation, and sometimes I skip through corporations. I'm going into a lot more detail here because I have less of a grasp on what I'm doing, and that's why I'm speaking through so much. For the Joliet, hooked up basically 2 routes going out of Chicago, and my 2+ train's gone. Paid out half, which moved me forward. Had to take a loan out to pay my loan interest. That's never a good idea. Taking loans for operating expenses? What? Yeah. That's how you get into a death spiral. But I got more train now. I should be able to survive. And when worst comes to worst, I can retire some of that loan soon. So I don't consider that too bad. I could have paid out full and moved forward twice, but I don't know. It's such a hard decision here because stock value... So in most games, stock value seems like something kind of... I don't know. You have a long way to go, and you can just keep paying out. As long as you pay out something, you go forward. But in the more modern designs, or that seem to be becoming more popular in current time, they are more modern. But with this kind of flat stock market and the idea of if you don't make your stock value, you don't go up in value. But as long as you paid something out, you don't go back. Make stock valuation not this constantly rising graph. Instead, it's like, well, If I don't pay out now, I can make up that ground, and I'm probably not going to hit the 600. That's more of an aspirational thing than like something you can actually reach in this game, or even get terribly close to. You need some really heavy, big trains at the end of the game and a good route to get up there. And if you've got that and you're in good shape otherwise, well, you should have won the game, you know? So it really isn't like this thing where everybody's going to, you know, where not paying out means you're not going to make it as high as you might otherwise. It doesn't mean that. You need to balance your corporate situation. So like the idea of paying out half, well, why? Well, in part because I get cash in my treasury. And sort of the stock valuation thing is more of a, well, I'm giving these guys potential cash when they sell off those shares. Is that terrible? I don't know. Not necessarily, because I'm also increasing the value of these shares and I'm putting more money in there, and there's just, you know, this whole spaghetti ball of information that you have to combine. I decided this dot was important to get that double route, but also in more general terms. I don't know how important it is. This northern route up through Toronto doesn't tend to be, well, in my last game it didn't look very great, and it doesn't here either. Part of the problem is it's got Toronto in it, which you can't block, but it's just not going to get that good. Providence and Worcester here hates its life. I ended up paying the 15 to try to break out here. I'm not sure how wise that is. I got a little tiny run, not much opportunity. I do have the opportunity to buy a train. That train's destined for the New York and Susquehanna. Try to screw the people who shorted it. But not just. It's also useful there and not very useful here. I noticed that I had my token over here, so I think I did not pay the $50 to move the token over. Otherwise, I may have shorted them $50, whatever. They paid out, but then took themselves out a bunch of loans, so their stock values dropped significantly. I'm planning on using them as a feeder. I do not see them as an interesting line, to tell you the truth. Yeah. So, more loan debt here. Probably going to boost up the number of shares, and buy some of those out at some point. I don't know when, but the main point is to try to get more train power over to the New York and Susquehanna so that I can save that company. That puts us over to the NW, which I don't know what's up with that. NW, on the other hand, is, you know, again, I'm in this situation where I have two corporations. I want to keep one space free for a 5 train. So I'm running the New York and Ontario a little bit less hot than I'm running the Elgin and Joliet, which has been running hard all game. And so I only made, what, 15 a share, which I unfortunately cheated with. I paid out and swallowed, which is no good. Okay, so I paid out. Let me figure out my loan situation. So instead of paying off a loan, I actually had to take one out. This is not an excellent situation, but I guess I'm going to have to throw some cash into it. Throw it out to a 10 share company to try to pay down those loans. Again, that may end up just being one of those corporations that fades away into the darkness. It's a shame. It's got a lot of dots, which the problem with dots is they don't necessarily help on other corporations' immediate income capability. So it's hard to, you know, say I want to take on loans to buy up those dots, or let's say I clear the loans out of there when it goes insolvent, which is probably a good idea, that it's going to get a lot of return on the stock value in terms of people bidding on it. I mean, those three dots are probably, I mean, they're worth $50 each in terms of what you must pay to get dots. But when you're looking at additional dots, unlike in, 1830 or something, where each additional dot costs more, here, well, the utility for those additional dots is not necessarily worth the same investment value that you initially had to put on dots. So I could see a company like this going for $50 with the three dots if it's got, no viable trains and no loan, no debt on it. I could see it maybe with one loan or something going for maybe $10 in the acquisition or $5 in the liquidation, where there's basically no share value. The loans don't count, right? Once it's in liquidation, the loans are going to be the president's responsibility. So out of whatever stock value he's able to make. So the stock value of that could end up being nothing, which kind of sucks if you keep throwing money into it, right? Well, the value's going into here. Arcade and Attica wasn't able to make much money, and in order to get its 4 train had to take a huge debt load on, which drops its stock value down to $50 a share. Now we're to the short guys. Let's see what happens. It's not going to be pleasant for the folk who sold short on them. That's not in great shape still. The Susquehanna also is not in great shape right now, but I've got an easy transfer there. So, yeah. Both of them have to have a feeder, though. And here's the thing. Without the ability to shift trains between corporations, short selling something like this, this kind of short sell on either of these two corporations, those guys are going to go down. The question is how much the president, if I couldn't get a feeder line for it, how much the president is willing to hurt the corporation to take down the short sellers. And but with a feeder line, you've changed the dynamic completely. And that's a difference between how I saw the two games. So some of my thoughts about short sales probably were looking at, sure, I've got an immediate out, but do I want to live with that immediate out? Is that really, where it's absolutely necessary in terms of, I don't want to get acquired or whatever, that's one thing. Or I don't want to I don't want to collapse completely and end up paying those loans. But where it's a matter of, I can just, slash somebody else's investment to shit by taking maybe a little hit on a feeder line and maybe make my good company, my company that's built nicely but has a debt problem, much, much healthier, which might be a good tactic anyway, but now it's just been boosted in value because, oh look, that asshole's sitting on a bunch of negative shares of my stuff. Let's make him pay. Alton and Southern not being a devastating blow to anyone nor a big payout. Paid half, made some stock value, essentially it's run with 21, but it paid out 11. Which is actually 11 because we're a 10-share company now. Which, it's a little bit of damage to the people who are holding the short position, but it's not a tremendous damage. So I'm feeling a little bit less icky about this because I suspect the same kind of thing is going to happen with the Susquehanna. They can't really afford... Now, the Alton and Southern would be different because if this priority wasn't here, it could have been a dump on this guy, which means it could have paid out full and then left his hands with, a huge debt load, maybe eat up a train or something if it could pick up another one. and really hurt both the next owner of it and the people who are holding the short position. And then I just go start another company or put my effort into the Grand Trunk or whatever. It's not like it's that great a position. It's a nice position, but it's not perfect. It's not one of the New York companies or whatever. It's got a lot of power sitting around Chicago, which is of some value, and there are a couple of B's because Pittsburgh's in the game that are near it, but it's just not it's not a stellar location, right? It's a decent location, and the map is pretty much set up at this point where there are pretty decent locations for companies starting anywhere on the board, although there aren't a lot of spaces open left anymore. Boston is probably one of the shittiest places on the board right now. And then obviously starting down here would suck. So what's left? Well, some empty spaces. And not a lot of room for a new corporation to start unless, you fire it off right away with like a friendly sale or an acquisition or something. On to the last of our companies for the operating round. And the Susquehanna as well. Buying a train for $1, running for half. Nowhere to put all my dots. And just no access to places. We hooked up Chicago. That gave us a little bit more pay, but still not anything great. Not able, again, to do a lot of harm to the people who short sold us. But we've probably cost them money and opportunity to some extent. So can't be too upset about things from either side. People who sold a share just as an investment, this guy probably sold one just as an investment. I think this guy mainly sold as an investment. I don't think he needed the money. This guy needed the money. That guy needed the money from them. So I think they did okay in terms of taking out a loan and paying some interest on that loan with their short sale. That's what it really worked out to be. People who did it just as an investment or just to do harm, not so much. Not so good a situation. But they didn't lose that much. Sometimes you buy a company stock and it doesn't pay out the way you expect it to. So I can't be too upset. Nobody was crushed by it. Things might have been significantly different if he had gone all out and bought the 3 and 4 trains with the Bessemer. That would have sped up the collapses, and a lot of corporations, and the Boston and Albany would have been hurt early too. But a lot of corporations would have paid a price for that, and it might have been more advantageous to have this big short position in that case. But and somebody pointed out they were expecting to see insolvencies here, but my style of more conservative play, which was really, this was a knife edge thing, that choice, right? And I couldn't pull the trigger on the more aggressive move. But my more conservative play across the board with everyone else as well means that things kind of survive. And why is that conservative play in play? Well, part of it is because my view on winning versus losing in a game like this. It's an economic game. Going bankrupt is really, really bad. Like, if you end up really hosed and out of the game and in last place and guaranteed to be in last place or knocked out of the game or whatever, that's sort of a worst case situation. You're an investor here. You should be making money, right? So it's a big difference between, a high risk move that maybe has an 80% chance of knocking you out of the game and a 20% chance of winning, coming in first. That's not worth making, ever. Because, I do view it in a real world type situation. I would view a game of hearts totally differently. I would make that high risk move in a game of hearts, because to me, coming in second or third in hearts is kind of meaningless. But in this, because there's a real world connection to what's going on, being the second or third richest multimillionaire in the railroad industry, I don't know. That's not so bad. Being bankrupted and unable to, continue in the investments, that is pretty bad. So, the context of the game matters to me. All right. That's going to retire another 4 train. That means there's one left going into the stock round again. Same situation as last time, where it's like, I don't know if I want to start a company getting that piece of shit. It's going to go away. But if you can juggle trains, there might be a big prize there, like a couple of 5s for you. And unlike in most of the XX games, there's not just a couple of 5s, there's 5 of them in this game. So if you can set it up so that you're likely, so that you're capable of getting 2 of them, you probably can manage it. In terms of, you probably can't get screwed out of it just by some little ordering changes or whatever. A big short sale or something could shift you far enough down that you no longer get to play in that range. And then, oh, terrible, you get a 6 train. It's not that horrible. The economic cost of maintaining these loans, though, means I don't have the cash to float a 10-share Boston and Albany as a particularly powerful thing. So I pass on that. Pittsburgh already filled up. Grand Trunk, though, that's only 2 shares. I need to get that to 5 shares if it's going to feed the Alton and Southern better. So we're going to expand that sucker. Myself having hard decisions on people on whether or not to buy a share of this. Not so much limited by money. This guy's got no share position, no open certificate limit, so he's just not doing it. This guy was going to do it because there's kind of the, hey, what's the harm, in terms of I get a share of something that is, okay, and I can dump it if I don't want it in the upcoming stock round. The position I'm in, it's not too harmful. I got enough cash, there's no problem there, but the problem is, again, certificate limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If I want to float the Providence and Worcester up to 10 shares, which I don't know if I want to. I'm basically saying, hey, I'll put $70 in for 100. So I think that doesn't really help me. And what do I mean 70 for 100? Well, I only have 1 share position that I can add to the company out of my own pocket, which means I will be paying money for extra tokens that I don't really need and not adding enough in there. I'll be gaining more loan capability, but I don't want to take loans from this. This is my feeder. It's going to probably die, and therefore I don't want it to die with a lot of loan on it. The main reason I'm trying to, I want to get more money in there is to pay off those loans. So no, I think I will buy a share of the Grand Trunk with this. Is the Grand Trunk the best thing that's likely to go? I don't know, but what options am I going to have? I really don't know, and I would like to have that extra share at this point because I get to pick it up without doing any harm. I can always sell it, and then it forces him to buy things. Of course, then that means I can't own Grand Trunks. It's kind of unimportant whether or not I buy it, to tell you the truth, because that value is not going anywhere between here and here. But there's some priority advantage to grabbing things, grabbing up investments when you get a chance. So we saw, I think, one other release only, which was the New York, Ontario, which went up to a 10-share company. Little bit of investment in it from elsewhere. The main investment came from the owner. Get some more cash in it. Keep it running. Try to pay off those loans. The the big question was over here, the Union and the Arcade in Attica. They've been slow at everything. But the main problem is I don't have a way to get cash into it quickly. I don't want to lose control of companies that I'm only sitting on 3 shares of, which probably can't happen, but so I'm going to divest in stocks during the stock market round and get myself set up for the next M&A to float it out there. That means I'll be making less cash, but that's okay. And I think that pushes us to the end of the turn here, and we've clearly gone long enough, I believe, to be able to call this the end of the video. Let's hope the merging of this video works. I haven't done a real one, just the test one, and that did not work right, but I think I know what's going on there, so we shall see.